Hi folks, it is more than time to give you the November update. It is November the 5th. Let's take a look at the month of November. There is plenty of content already out there. The Scorpio new moon video. I don't need to tell you what the content is. If you look at my last set of videos, you'll see what is relevant. I would say pay attention to the Scorpio new moon video. Take a look at, if you haven't already, the Scorpio and Sagittarius transits videos. They're actually quite important. And as we start to talk about the November overview, it will become clear where. I want to talk about November in such a way that I'm not overly repeating, or really repeating at all, a lot of what I've already put out there. I want to just take a step back entirely. November is, for all intents and purposes, a new moon in Scorpio month. The new moon in Scorpio happened on November the 1st. The new moon in Sagittarius is on November the 30th. The 28-day month that a new moon starts up lines up perfectly with a November 1st date. So November, in terms of the annual parade of the Sun, Mercury, and Venus through the various houses at roughly the same time of the year, roughly. The Sun, definitely, but with Mercury and Venus, as you know, there are variations. Makes all of November very clearly a Sag month. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have Venus and Mercury now in Sag, and Venus soon will be in Capricorn, so that will add a certain amount of spice to things. But this is where the new moon in Scorpio video will help, and this is where this video will help as well. Let me zoom out, and I'm going to zoom out, I'm going to zoom in from there. First and foremost, November is the first 3 weeks of November are forward-moving weeks. The personal planets all direct. On November the 26th, Mercury goes retrograde. 25th to 26th, depending on... I'm just looking at this. It's actually the 25th for me here in California. So 25th, 26th. So till about the 22nd of November, it's forward movement. Mercury will start to slow down around November 20th onwards. Now, you know... It's an awkward time for Mercury to go retrograde. So when it comes to Thanksgiving travel plans, just take a deep breath and see, just say a prayer. Make sure you look at the times on your tickets correctly, not 6 a.m. for a 6 p.m. time or something like that. And, as you know, Mercury retrograde is notorious, particularly the dates when Mercury is going retrograde or direct. Notorious for travel-related snafus, communication-related snafus, technology-related snafus, bags getting lost, all that kind of stuff. The next video I'm going to do after this is on Mercury retrograde, because Mercury enters his shadow degrees on November the 7th, 2 days from now. And if I do that video tomorrow, it'll be 1 day before Mercury enters that. So we'll cover Mercury retrograde, but from a November overview perspective, what I need you to understand is that the first 3 weeks of November are forward movement. And then with Mercury retrograde, it's one of two things. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, it is time to make some decisions again. You might feel really in communication sync with Spirit and the universe, and you might be at a place where you are much more decisive about what you want to do next and where you want things to go. With Mercury retrograde, folks, they are decisive while Mercury is retrograde, notoriously over-analytical, deliberate, with their own sense of time when Mercury is direct. But from an overall perspective, decisions are made while Mercury is retrograde, and they roll out when Mercury is direct for 3 months, and then 3 weeks of decision-making, and then roll out. This is an overview. I'm being arguably a little general, but not inaccurate, I don't think. And of course, the second thing is if Mercury is direct in your birth chart, then Mercury retrograde, most significantly, is a time to get a reality check in those areas where we've allowed fantasy to enter into certain scenarios, which is normal, which is understandable. What does it mean for fantasy to enter a certain scenario? Oh, I've been interviewing for this job. I had a second round. I think it's going to start on this date. And Mercury goes retrograde and you realize something about it. Or, oh, I worked on this project. I think, my assumption is, based on the way everyone is talking about it, is that things are going to develop in such a way that it's going to turn into a full-time thing. I consulted on something for a few weeks and Mercury goes retrograde and you realize that it may not be happening at all, or what people were assuming isn't entirely accurate, or not everybody's on the same page as you thought it was. And there is this element of being on the same page and not being on the same page. And there's this element of, oh, I thought I was going to be done with this job in September, and Mercury retrograde happens and you realize, well, you can't really be done with it till December, kind of a thing. Or 2 rounds of interviews have happened and then Mercury goes retrograde and you realize that one of the interviewers has their own internal candidate, or there's something. There's a coming down to earth when Mercury goes retrograde from an overall perspective. We know about the Mercury retrograde snafus, right? We know to expect on a mundane level miscommunications and not committing to things and not signing things. But Mercury retrograde is for everybody to some extent, but for people who have Mercury direct in the birth chart, is time to go back to the drawing board and make adjustments based on reality. And when I do the Mercury retrograde video tomorrow, I'm going to talk about it's not a hard no on making certain decisions. If something comes in to rescue you from something that has an element of fantasy and is a godsend because it is clarifying certain things in terms of timelines and directions and is a reality check, then that doesn't mean that if something comes through while Mercury is retrograde, you should say no to it. Details about it or information about it may change once Mercury goes direct, but it's not a hard no. It's not. We'll expand on this, but energetically, the first 3 weeks of November, Mercury is direct. And for me, for people who have Mercury direct in their birth charts, then September, October, first 3 weeks of November, forward movement, and then November 26th or Mercury goes retrograde, but November 22nd to about December 19th or so, it's time to let things get adjusted. Let us understand what is actually going on. Let us understand what is actually real. And then take it from there. And then build from there. Again, when Mercury goes direct. Okay, so that, broadly speaking, is the most important overview item as far as November is concerned. And if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, keep rolling out what you agreed to or decided to do in August, and then November 25th, 26th to December 15th. But if you want to extend it a little bit, November 22nd to December 18th, 19th, could be a time that finds you, particularly when Mercury is retrograde exactly, may find you really decisive and making decisions for what you want to do, and you just feel snappier in that regard. And then for the 3 months following Mercury retrograde, you can enact on what you decide. The full moon in Uranus is on November the 16th. I've been saying 15th. It's on November the 16th. And it promises to be... It's certainly an exciting full moon. I mean, it is conjunct Uranus in Taurus and trine Pluto in Capricorn. It is conjunct Donald Trump's midheaven. So there's. I'm not going to expand on that at this point in time. Anyway, let's just leave that alone for where it's at. I'm recording this on November the 5th, 9:07 p.m. and it's all mayhem. It is conjunct the fixed star Algol, but again, I'm there's going to be a separate full moon video and we'll take care of it then. The important thing is that it is trine Pluto. And it's nice, I think, to have a full moon conjuncting Uranus with the full moon trining Pluto, because as Pluto gets ready, and this is the third important thing about November, to move from Capricorn into Aquarius on November the 19th, a few days, it's nice that he gets a bit of a boost, because as we entered November, we had the first of the oppositions from Mars to Pluto on November the 3rd. And that is likely to reflect some degree of opposition or tension or confusion or, yeah. As I said, be careful of rashness. And it's November the 5th, so the opposition is done. And the next opposition when Mars is retrograde isn't till early Jan. So we can breathe a little. But the bottom line is, as Pluto's getting ready to leave, fresh off of an opposition from Mars, who may have tried to slow things down or derail them or stop them, we get to move towards a full moon on November the 16th that trines Pluto. So there's a bit of a boost to Pluto. And it's interesting because Venus enters Capricorn on November the 11th. And from within Capricorn, Venus will square the nodes and square Chiron, but also move towards trining Uranus. And of course, as Venus moves through Capricorn and into Aquarius, she's going to meet up with Pluto. And Venus and Pluto conjuncted last, not that, on January the 17th, 18th, something like that. And we're going to have the first of the Pluto conjunctions in Aquarius, if I'm not mistaken, practically roughly around that degree again. So that should be interesting. This is a November overview. A lot of the things that I'm talking about here will get expanded on as I do future videos. Okay, it's going to be impossible not to talk about the Venus-Pluto conjunction in a video of its own. And let me give you the exact date. It's not in Venus conjunct Pluto. Let me give you the exact date for that. Why I am December 7th. My birthday. Lovely. Fascinating. Venus conjunct Pluto in Aquarius at that time. So let me bring us back to where we need to be. Full moon, trine Pluto, with Venus present in Capricorn as well. It's nice that Pluto gets to have that boost after the opposition from Mars on November the 3rd. So let's talk now about planets changing signs and when they occur in November. On November the 2nd, this has already happened, Mercury entered Sagittarius. So till November the 11th, we have both Mercury and Venus in Sagittarius. And as I mentioned, I've already done videos regarding the transits through Scorpio and Sagittarius. I would look at them. Dates of planets entering houses are really interesting because I can really see, and it's also fascinating with Mercury entering. So Venus, when she has been in Sagittarius, those of you, so Venus has been in Sagittarius from October 17th to November 11th. And as I've mentioned to you in videos before, wherever Venus goes, she showers blessings and creates harmony and builds bridges and opens up a certain amount of luck. But she also asks if matters related to the Sagittarius part of the chart in this case, or whichever part of the chart that she's transiting, are in alignment with your goals. There is a square to Saturn and Neptune from there, which has to be kind of paid attention to. What needs to be done to acknowledge Saturn trying to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, and Neptune, there's a greater awareness of tension. While in November, we are bringing the Scorpio part of the chart into alignment with where we want to go and what is important to us and what we value, and how bringing it into alignment is going to help Saturn and Neptune, Saturn especially, stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, make us act more responsibly towards that. That is one of the important themes during November. But at the same time, we've got this Venus transit. The Venus transit creates these questions, but then Mercury follows, and has started to follow since November the 2nd. And Mercury, out of the personal planets, is going to be the last of the planets to leave Sagittarius also, because he's going to go retrograde and then direct. He doesn't leave till January 10th or 11th. And so whatever is starting to be thought about and communicated in Sag is going to go through its own kind of reality check, and is going to go through its own sort of Mercury retrograde process from November 25th, 26th to December 15th. And you know, these planets are going to oppose Jupiter in Gemini. There's a lot to think through there. That Sagittarius transit video will be a helpful video to take a look at. And as I said, this is an overview. I will expand on these themes more. And we're not done with this overview yet. So what I just talked about, we'll talk about a little bit more in a second. So November the 2nd, Mercury in Sagittarius. November the 3rd, Mars in Leo. Feisty, feisty. And Mars is going to be in Leo for a second. Mars goes retrograde in Leo in the 6th to 7th degree, but all of November and all of December will be spent in these 6 degrees. You know, he goes retrograde with December the 6th. And so he's already slow. He's already slower. We don't really land in the Leo part of the chart with Mars until the middle of April. But depending on what's going on in your chart, and which houses Cancer and Leo sit in, Mars entering Leo certainly provides a bit of a boost of energy, hopefully. Now, you know, if you're Virgo rising and Leo is in your 12th house, that becomes a bit of an exception, right? And the energy turns a little bit quieter and behind the scenes and reflective, etc. So it very much depends on where Cancer and Leo sit in your chart. But bottom line is Mars has entered Leo, and most importantly, Mars is moving towards conjuncting the North Node on November the 17th. And that Mars conjunction with the North Node, Mars is moving to trine the North Node in Aries on November the 17th. And that trine between Mars and the North Node is encoded into that full moon in Taurus on November the 15th, because it becomes exact a couple of days later. And Mars does that trine, moves a little bit forward, and then retrogrades back. There's a whole Mars retrograde video that is also out there for you to take a look at if you need to. So once again, new moon in Scorpio November the 1st, Mercury enters Sagittarius November the 2nd. Did some communications related to the Sagittarius part of the chart increase actually happen? These distinctions right now are so exciting to ponder in the Scorpio part of the chart, the Sag part of the chart, and even the Capricorn part of the chart, because Venus is so much further ahead now. She's getting ready to go retrograde in March, April, between Aries and Pisces, so we have time. But as Venus gets closer and closer to going retrograde, the bottom line is she moves further and further ahead of Mercury and the Sun. And so what is happening that is so interesting to contemplate is that with Mercury and Venus and the Sun right now and the new moon, we really have the opportunity to distinguish between the specific energies these planets are creating as they transit through a specific part of the chart. So if Venus is still going through Sagittarius but started October the 17th, one of the things to contemplate as you look at these distinctions is there's something related to the Sag part of your chart, the house occupied by Sagittarius, starting November the 2nd, where communication has increased. And is there something about that communication that you already feel is going to require clarification, so that you can see and feel like that retrograde is building? You know, we're coming to it. It's not as simple as whenever Mercury enters a certain part of the chart, we start to process a lot more and think a lot more and communicate. And a lot of the thinking and the communicating is about the question that Venus has been posing since October the 17th. Is everything in the Sag part of the chart in alignment with where you want to go? Is it supporting? Are your resources and relationships supporting where you want to go? Or are they a leak? And here are some opportunities to take advantage of. But watch out for those squares with Saturn and Neptune, and but also, you know, there are trines to the North Node in Chiron. Anyway, there's a whole Sag video to look at. November the 3rd, Mars in Leo. Oh, November the 5th, Mercury in Sag is going to trine the North Node in Aries. November the 5th, today. Did that already happen? Fascinating. The weekly overview will give you more information on that. The purpose of this video is not to shuttle you into different videos. It's to be more of an overview. Just bear with me and go through it. I want you to have this bird's eye view of November And we are getting to a couple more points that we're going to make. On November the 11th, as I've already mentioned, Venus enters Capricorn, the first of the personal planets to enter Capricorn. So after November 11th, blessings, finances, relationships related to the Capricorn part of the chart may start to show up, and Venus may start to look at the Capricorn part of the chart and say, all right, everything in alignment in the Capricorn part of the chart. By the time, Mercury is not going to be the next planet to come into Capricorn. It's going to be the Sun on December 22nd. So as I said, Venus is significantly moving forward, and the new moon in Capricorn is, I think, December the 30th. So whatever Venus does over the next few weeks after November the 11th in the sign of Capricorn is going to get a bit of a pause before the Sun actually enters Capricorn and the new moon is formed there at the end of the year. And this is what I mean by you'll be able to start to get a distinction of what did Venus in Capricorn ask and create that you then were not able to act on until the Sun came into Capricorn December 22nd and the new moon occurred on, December the 22nd, and the new moon occurs on December the 30th. And then Mercury comes in on January the 11th. And so, the communication begins that. So I think it's a great way of looking at the energies of Venus and Mercury and the Sun and the new moon, because the planets are getting further apart, and just makes the process more fun. It becomes interesting and engaging to know what questions Venus is going to pose. November the 15th, Saturn goes direct. So people who have Saturn retrograde in their birth charts are feeling the impact of Saturn more right now. And after Saturn goes direct, the energy will shift, and Saturn's lessons and intensity is going to start to be felt much more by the people who have Saturn direct in their birth charts after November the 15th. On the 16th, of course, we have the Taurus full moon. 17th, Mars trines the North Node. On the 19th, Pluto enters Aquarius for the next 18 years. On the 22nd, right on cue, the Sun enters Sagittarius. So Venus in Sagittarius till November the 11th. Mercury already in Sag. The Sun comes in on November the 22nd. Mercury goes retrograde on November the 25th. And the new moon occurs on November the 30th in Sag. Oh man, that's going to be its own. That's, as we get closer to all of that, we'll talk about what all of that means. But at least you have the information. The Sun will trine the North Node on November the 24th. And that's it. That's what's, as November progresses then, Venus is going to spend half of November, more than half of November in Capricorn. Mercury will make his way through most of Sagittarius and go retrograde on November the 25th. That's the biggest first 3 weeks of November forward movement, getting ready for Mercury retrograde after that. And I look forward to Mercury retrogrades because I'm still learning how to work with its energy because I have Mercury direct. And I feel like with every successive Mercury retrograde direct, I have more to tell you guys based on everything that I observe with myself and others. I learned a very important lesson in August, which I'll be happy to share about tomorrow in tomorrow's video. Yeah. So what I don't want to do is give you all the lists of trines and squares and oppositions that these planets are going to make, because they are. Till November the 22nd, the Sun is in Scorpio. So as he heads towards the full moon, he is going to oppose Uranus. From Scorpio, he is going to trine, at this point in time, Neptune. All those transits are going to be made, and I prefer to talk about those transits. I've given you an overview of those transits in the Scorpio and Sagittarius videos, and I'm going to talk about those transits more when we do the weekly overviews. I don't want to, we'll just go insane if I tell you, on this date this happens, and this date this happens, this square and this trine. The bottom line is we're at a place right now where the personal planets in relationship with the slower moving planets are opposing some, trining some, squaring some. And with Venus's entry into Capricorn and headed to that Venus-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius on December the 7th, that is the first conjunction of the personal planets with the slower moving planets. And the slower moving planets are in Aquarius, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Pisces. North Node currently, North Node will move into Pisces in the beginning of next year, 25. North Node in Chiron in Aries, Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Gemini. So there's a lot of conjunctions at that point in time. And Mars, as that happens, is making Mars's retrograde is kind of glorious in the 3 trines to the North Node and Saturn and Neptune, and the assertive opposition to Pluto that Mars is going to be making. So it's a tumultuous time. We know where we are at in our journey towards moving towards the Aries part of our chart in the North Node in Aries till the end of the first week of June of next year. You've been following, you know that the forward movement in the chart is primarily in Aries, but Uranus and Taurus and Jupiter and Gemini also contributing to it. And you know that the part of the chart that really needs to be stabilized, we need to act responsibly to manage and structure matters related to that chart, is the Pisces part of the chart. We know this. November, the card for November is Wheel of Fortune. So the question is, what happens? What turns? What transforms? November does promise to be a month of change. And I define and describe a lot of the activity right now, even though nothing really happens necessarily for a while in November related to this. It really happens only in the last week of November, the week before and after December the 2nd. Is going to be an important echo related to the South Node solar eclipse in Libra in October the 2nd. And Libra is where we're meant to release something so that we can move into the Aries part of the chart. Move towards the Aries part of the chart. And there's this question with the Scorpio part of the chart of bringing it into alignment. Does something come up that allows us to stabilize and bring the Scorpio part of the chart into alignment so that anything that is stagnant as a status quo can get revitalized? Or is the status quo so not stagnant that it needs to be released? That is very much the question. Out of everything that I've mentioned, the primary, if someone were to say to me, Abhi, what is the number one thing we should be paying attention to in our chart? I would say there are 2. Where the eclipse is occurring, the North Node and the South Node, and where's Saturn? That's it. If you don't have time to think about anything else, you've got to know where the North Node and South Node eclipses are going in your chart and where Saturn is in your chart. And you need to figure out your relationship with those transits. And with the North Node and the South Node, rashness is not your friend. You will be called to, and I believe that you should, lean towards the North Node eclipses where they're occurring in your chart, but in a grounded way, because there's something about the North Node that makes us throw all caution to the wind, because the call and the pull and the desire is so strong. It feels so right. And it likely, there's something to be gained by that carrot at the end of that stick. But the North Node is also notorious for not quite completely deliberate, just kind of pulling us and developing us in that direction. But what we have to gain in experience that is going to help with our evolution, and we have to believe that those desires are put in our heart for a reason, they bring fulfillment, is indicated primarily by the North Node placement in our natal chart and where those North Node eclipses are taking place. And wherever Saturn is, you can't ignore that. We've got to honor Saturn's desire for us to act responsibly in the part of the chart that he is transiting, so that we can reach our highest potential at that part of the chart. Now, once we start to expand from there, I would say pay attention to where the new moons and the full moons are occurring, particularly the new moon. And once we start to expand from there, knowing where Jupiter is, what he's doing, what Uranus is doing, what Neptune, Pluto are doing, can be factored in. But what really needs to be factored in next after the new moon and full moon is where's the annual parade of personal planets. And in everything I've told you about the November overview, I've talked about the entry of Venus into Capricorn. I've talked about the fact that the Sagittarius, I don't know whether to call it a hurricane. I'll just call it a light twister starting to brew. Because Venus is still there, creating her bridges and her harmony. But Mercury is in there, starting to stir up the communication and the thinking. And then Mercury is going to go retrograde. Just a few days after the sun enters Sagittarius to illuminate it, and the new moon of action occurs on November the 30th. That is a... And during that time, on December the 6th, Mars turns retrograde. And in this idea of moving towards the end of the first week of June, Mars is pretty much done with his transit in Leo, finally. Jupiter changes signs from Gemini to Cancer. The impact of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on April the 20th of 24 is done in Taurus. And the North Node eclipses after the end of the first week of June in Aries, start to lose their grip. And we move more decisively towards the Pisces-Virgo axis of eclipses, which has already begun. But right now, the priority is still very much on the Aries-Libra axis, and the primary priority with the eclipses is, of course, the Libra eclipse, because we are under the influence of the Libra solar eclipse on October the 2nd. So I've talked about all this, but I have not given appropriate and complete, don't forget that while stuff is going to be happening in the Capricorn part of the chart, and while stuff is going to be happening in the Sagittarius part of the chart, November is a month focused on the Scorpio part of our chart. And action needs to be taken there. And we do have this dynamic full moon in the opposing part of the chart in Taurus, trining Pluto, which will bring its own excitement. But outside of needing to move towards the Aries part of the chart, and even more importantly, focusing on what needs to be released in the Libra part of the chart right now. That's the eclipses. Number 2, focusing on how Saturn wants us to stabilize and act responsibly in the Pisces part of a chart. Drawing boundaries, paying attention to how we are contributing to challenges, acting responsibly, not rashly, acting in a Saturnian way, wise, mature, strategic, in our best interests. But not it's in my best interest, so I'm going to, in a karmically positive way. And that doesn't mean being a pushover with Saturn. And the reason why I'm bringing those two, the Aries, Libra, and Saturn and Pisces up, is that so many of these squares and trines that are occurring from the Scorpio and Sag and Capricorn part of the chart are to those houses. So paying attention to what needs to be released in the Libra part of the chart, paying attention to what Saturn wants you to do in the Pisces part of the chart, and then bringing the Scorpio part of the chart into some sort of alignment with where you want to go, seeing if you can, I think that's really all I want to say about that. Because as I said, it can be either you are having to release something that is stagnant by the end of the month and not fruitful, something that has been a comfort zone but is actually starting to create loss. And something could come up with that November 16th full moon that either brings an opportunity to your attention or creates something or does something that helps clarify which direction to move in. And of course, the other part of this is also, does something happen during November that allows you to take, if something in the Libra Scorpio parts of the chart are stagnant, does something come in that allows you to stabilize those parts of the chart and release what needs to be released, but turn something that is barren and stagnant into something that is fruitful. It's one of those two things. Okay, that's all I really want to say. There's nothing wrong with a 35-minute video. So overview, first 3 weeks of November, forward movement followed by Mercury retrograde. A dynamic full moon in Taurus conjuncting Uranus, trine Pluto on October. I keep saying, those of you who have written to me, by the way, here I go again. I was supposed to say this at the beginning of the video. I am still running. I have a few more slots, not a ton. I do still have a few more slots for my $100 reading specials. I'm not gonna, they're discounted readings primarily for US, Canada, and EU folks, because the discount is actually substantial there. Some people actually wrote to me wanting those in other geographies, and I've kind of, I gave them the price, but I'm not holding the space because it's really not that much of a discount for them. So I'm not gonna, I'm gonna keep spaces open for the people who need the discount at this point in time. And I am a little over 2/3. There are slots, so if you're interested, use the description area, the email address in the description area below to email me there. And more information on this special is in a separate video I did just before this one, and I'll pin that in the comment section once I'm done processing this and post a link to it at the end. So just know that. But it's why did that even come up? But let me just go back to first 3 weeks of November. Who the hell knows how my brain made that association? First 3 weeks of November, forward movement, followed by Mercury retrograde. Full moon, trine Pluto on, oh, this is why I said it. I keep saying October instead of November. So if in this video I'm still mixing October and November up, some of you who have written to me to avail of the discount, this is why I went into the discount, at least 2 occasions, if not 3, have said, did you mean November? You said October. And I'm just like, what is wrong with me? So yeah, just forgive me if I've been loose with the October, Novembers in this particular, this is a November overview. It'll be clear if I'm talking about an October date, really. And if I say October something and you know it's November, I'd go with November and forgive me. And I've already told you which planets are changing signs. And finally, I've already told you, even though some of the exciting news is in the Sag and the Capricorn part of the chart, just remember that November is still a Scorpio month. I'll place links to the Scorpio, you know what, I'll place links to the Scorpio new moon video and maybe the Sagittarius transits video and the reading discount at the end of this video. And yeah, if you are interested in getting a reading, use the email address in the description box below to email me and I can get you information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Next to the subscribe button is a bell icon. Hover over it. There's a wiggly bell on top. Click on that. You'll be notified when I do new videos. Comment, like the video if you feel so inclined. It gives a greater circulation on YouTube. Tell your friends about the channel if you find this content useful. This is a November overview. There are times when I broaden out and there are times when I narrow down. And as I said, I don't want to look at November the way I look at the weekly overviews. We'll go over the trines and the changes and all of that in the weekly overview. I really just want to give you a sense of the energy in November. Just where the pendulum is swinging. So you just have that opportunity to look ahead at the next 3.5 weeks. Okay. And I hope you found that part of it useful. There's a thanks button underneath this video. You can use that to contribute to the channel. I think I'm going to leave it at that for now. And we will start to talk about the Mercury retrograde next, and then move towards talking about the full moon and whatever else is coming up. When it comes to this week on November the 9th, I mean, really the only thing about this week now is on November the 9th where Venus squares Neptune. And this is what I mean by Venus and Sagittarius building these bridges, creating harmony. But you're going to have to pay attention from the Sagittarius part of the chart to the Saturn-Neptune squares. All right, my darlings, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want you to get a headache. And more to follow soon. Take care.